Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here with us today. I hope our little dog jams got you in the mood. My name is Carissa Bartelt, and I'm a part of the marketing team here at CVent. I'm really excited to talk about this topic with you guys today. Building experiences, connections, that brand connection through different channels is really that kind of omni-channel marketing approach is my jam. And when we think about it in the context of events, it's really such an amazing time to be a marketer or event planner. You have so many tools and things at your disposal now, not only to get people registered for your event, but really create that vibe and energy and that connection. So that by the time you kick off your webinar or your conference or whatever, your audience is at peak readiness to take in information and take action. And when we think about what happens after your event ends, there are ways to keep that momentum going, reuse the information, and make it worthwhile through marketing in different channels afterwards. I've got some brilliant marketers here with me today, and I can't wait to introduce them. But we also really want you guys to be a part of the action, a part of this presentation today. So please join the chat on the right-hand side of your screen and submit any questions in the Q&A section off to your right. We're going to be answering them before, during, and after the presentation. So feel free to upvote any existing questions that you see in the Q&A that you really like. And also the chat will remain open for about 30 minutes at the end of the webinar. So feel free to stick around and ask us some more questions. Since we enticed a lot of you here today with pictures of my cute dog, let's bring her up on the screen. Fun fact, she is 10 years old and has no name. If you want to hear about how I can possibly have a 10-year-old dog with no name, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn and stuff, and I'll tell you the story. So to kick things off, I want to launch a poll to all of you guys here with us today, just to get us ready. I want to know what channels you are currently using to promote your brands and or events. Feel free to toss in some answers in the chat if a channel that you are using right now isn't in the poll. While those answers come in, I know I don't really need to tell you guys that it's been a wild couple of years. And this has changed the way we think about events and marketing, especially a lot. We soon see new marketing channels popping up all the time. Last year, in a HubSpot survey, more than 80% of marketers said that marketing has changed more in the last 3 years than it really has over the course of the last 50. So the reality is that this multi-channel marketing and finding creative ways to fuel those channels with the right content is a necessity for us. Leveraging a single channel with one strategy no longer works because our audience craves truth. They crave authenticity, information, and they're looking for more than one proof point, more than one way to get to know you and see what you're all about, your organization, your company, your purpose, and they want to do it on their own time. So your marketing and outreach needs to be discoverable and actionable in a way that makes them want to consume it when and how they want. So this is why that multi-channel approach is really so important, and it will help take your event promotion to the next level. So how can we use these channels in our event marketing strategy? And how should we think about events within this holistic customer journey? Let's peek at some of those results over there on the side. Email's big. LinkedIn also. I see some podcasts coming up there. Very small amount for TikTok. I'm excited to talk through that. I think now it's time to bring on some of the rest of our speakers. It's really great to have them here today. So we're going to start out by introducing our speakers and sharing pictures of our adorable dogs, just to bring a smile to your faces. So I'm going to turn it over to Colleen. Colleen, can you start by telling us just a little bit about what you do, what type of events you support, what's your role, and what channels do you look after?
Of course. I am the content strategist for Exit Planning Institute, which is an educational company. We do programs and credentialing programs and offerings for financial advisors and advisors who work with business owners. I am responsible for creating all of our content, so long form contents in blogs, white papers, infographics, case studies, all of our organic social, our email copy, and then working with promoting our podcasts. And all of that leads up into promoting our big annual event, which is called the Exit Planning Summit. And I have a rescue dog named Remy. And he usually joins me on all of my Zoom meetings, just sitting right on my lap. He wants to be a part of it all. But I'm currently in the office today, so he's enjoying some freedom at home. And I can toss it over now to Tiffany to tell a little bit more about what she does.
Hey, everybody. I'm Tiffany Sanford. I lead demand gen at Cvent for our mid-market North America team. My primary goal here at Cvent is really to deliver high-quality leads to sales and drive growth for the business through brand awareness, channels, and tactics. So I'm really focused on the channels and tactics that create and capture demand. This includes channels like web, paid social, podcast, and obviously our bread and butter at Cvent, events and webinars. I have two golden fluff balls, Milo and Layla. Milo just turned 3 in December. He's on the left there. And then Layla on the right is only 1. I will tell you, they love long walks, popcorn, dirty socks, anything that squeaks. And hopefully they stay away from the squeaky toys during this webinar, but I would not be surprised if they did that. Jen, over to you.
Okay, perfect. Hi, everyone. I'm Jen. I'm the Community and Events Manager at Clue. We are a competitive enablement platform that helps product marketers and competitive intelligence source all their market, buyer, and competitor intelligence, and then disseminate that to all the teams to help you win more deals in the market. In my role at Clue, I'm really focused on building out our community as well as our events. And so that entails multiple channels, such as webinars. Although at Clue, we like to say we don't host webinars, we host community gatherings online. We have multi-day virtual conference that we host each year in November, and we're looking at exploring some more meetups, trade shows, and dinners later this year. The channels I'm really active on are our community. For us, a lot of them live on LinkedIn. And then we also have a number of advocacy programs that I can speak to more. And that includes our influencers, our ambassadors, and even some more official advisors. So happy to jump into that. Back to you, Krissa, and we can jump into some of these questions.
Awesome, guys. So I think the thing I'm most excited about today is having this mix of kind of different approaches to different channels. Each of you bring this very different perspective of marketing strategy, right? And ownership of kind of what you look to bring to the table. Colleen, you're really all about that content education. We've got Tiffany, who's all about lead gen and action and conversions. And Jen is really about that community and relationships. So let's start out with the first question of the day. When you think about looking at supporting events, how do these points of view and your specific area of subject matter expertise help play into finding the right mix of channels and tactics?
Yeah, I'm happy to take on that one. So, to find the right mix of channels and tactics, you need to start with your audience. This involves having a deep understanding of your ICP or ideal customer profile and where your audience consumes content and makes buying decisions. The challenging piece is creating demand for your event, right? And the reason why I say this is challenging is because demand creation tactics are not always easy to track. The reason being is because a lot of demand creation takes place in what we call the dark social. So the dark social is where a lot of purchasing decisions happen, but there's no tracking or intent data. So when you think of dark social, this includes places like LinkedIn DMs and comments, YouTube, podcasts, networking events, word of mouth through text messaging, Zooms, DMs, and communities. Or maybe the person used your software at another company, and because they valued and trusted your company so much, they were influencers when the time came and they needed your software at their new company. So I have an example of this. I registered for an event a few months ago. I saw a lot of chatter and hype on LinkedIn around the event, and a lot of my marketing influencers were either speaking or attending. I did not click on the registration link on LinkedIn, and I did not convert on their paid social efforts. But a few weeks later, I searched for the event on Google and converted from there. So if you're looking at your attribution report, the lead source would say organic search conversion. But really, the point in which I raised my hand to convert was actually just seeing a bunch of chatter on LinkedIn. So this is what I mean by dark social. I really wanted to highlight that because it's extremely important to understand that just because you can't easily track the success of a tactic or a channel, that does not mean that it's not working. There are ways that you can easily track this dark social data, but what it really comes down to is time, patience, and investing in self-attribution and being creative with your data. So I do want to highlight really quick self-attribution. So this would really include things like talking to your best customers and asking them how they heard about you. Or after a demo, you could have your sales team ask the same question, how did they hear about us? And then the third option is you could actually add a free text form field on one of your high intent web forms for how did you hear about us? So to kind of shift gears, once you've identified your audience and where they live, the important thing to note is your audience probably lives on every social media platform available. And there are so many. You have LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and now TikTok is growing insane right now. So for us at Cvent, event planners and marketers are our primary audience. Obviously, LinkedIn is a huge channel for both personas, but we have also explored YouTube this past year and saw great success there. And then we also relaunched a new podcast series and have seen great engagement metrics there as well. So if you're in the higher ed industry, you probably found that 95% of your audience lives on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Probably not LinkedIn and probably not Twitter. So what I would do is, if that's the case, if those are the three channels, I would commit to those three channels. So the key takeaway here is, as you're thinking about your 2023 plan, I would focus on the channels that you're having the most success with. Pick 3 to go all in on, and then maybe set time aside to explore maybe one additional channel this year. Again, all of this is going to go back to who is your audience and who have you identified as your ICP. And don't be naive to what's happening in the dark social. Invest time in self-attribution and stay in constant communication with your sales team.
I love that, Tiffany. What about, Jen, what about you, from a really someone who thrives on getting people engaged and getting people connected, right? Does that play into how you choose channels that maybe help lend themselves easy to engagement and interaction?
Yeah, for sure. And I was going to say the dark social is where I live. So I do struggle a lot with the attribution, especially through all the relationship building that we're doing. Many folks on the Clue team have relationships with our customer community, with our influencers and ambassadors. And so there's no way to track all of those individual DMs or now Slack Connect groups that have been starting to form. So yeah, for me, I live and thrive in relationship building. And so a lot of that, I have regular ongoing conversations or 15-minute coffee chats where I'm touching base with our community. Luckily, we have a pretty small but growing community of product marketers and competitive intelligence specialists. And so we have a lot of those relationships. A lot of them will really help dictate what channels they spend the most time on, who they want to connect with at future events, and what topics really resonate. And so with those micro interviews, while it might not be scalable to the masses, that's what really helps us create that right promotional strategy. And then it also helps them buy in when we are promoting the event. They feel like they've had their voice, their say. There's a topic that's specifically curated just for them. You can do that more so when you have multiple events. One-off webinars, maybe it's a little bit trickier. But we also then send them direct messages on LinkedIn and say, hey, would love to see you in the chat. Do you want to help moderate? Do you want to engage? And so from there, it becomes more of a discussion amongst peers rather than a brand talking specifically to an audience. And so that's where we've really been able to leverage our community in a lot of these ways. LinkedIn is still great. And then, yeah, email always converts. But I think there's that dark social that they've seen it all across LinkedIn. They've had conversations. Perhaps they've gone to a direct search too. But yeah, I find it's hard to track the impact of what I do day in, day out. But we have great qualitative quotes and really testimonials that speak to that.
Yeah, and that's kind of similar with my job as well. Managing all of our social, all of our blogs, things like that. It's hard to determine, is that the first step that they've seen us, is the LinkedIn post? Did they come to us from somewhere else, if our salesperson has converted that lead, where was that initial? How are we doing attribution modeling? Is it from that first touch? Is it last touch? Is it the steps along the way? So that dark social too, if that's an additional component to add in, those attribution modeling sources can be a little tricky. So dark social definitely plays a big role in our industry as well.
Awesome. I'm going to move to the next question too. So given everything that's happened the last couple of years, right, the way that we need to communicate with our audience has changed. It lives in this kind of world of informal communication, I would say. And after 2 years of really this digital first virtual events and content consumption, I think our event attendees especially now have this certain craving for like on demand and instant connectivity, right? We spend so much of our time on social or online where I can find the answers that I want quickly. And if it takes a while, it gets a little bit frustrating. There's a recent Forrester survey that came out too that said 77% of marketing and event leaders are feeling like even in-person event attendees have higher expectations for that digital connectivity and consumption than they did a few years ago. So they want to be engaged with your brand and getting excited kind of around them, right? Immersed in this. And before, during, after, they want to feel and have access to that information. So what marketers and planners thought before was like a temporary situation has now like permanently changed how organizations build and promote their events and how our audience really experiences them. So next question is, what new channels and forms of content do we feel might start to gain a lot of traction with this digital first or consumption mindset? And I'm going to toss it over to Colleen since she is kind of our content specialist expertise on the call today.
Yeah, of course. So like I said, I manage all of Exit Planning Institute's content, and we have programs that take place throughout the year, credentialing programs to become a certified exit planning advisor or a CEPA. So we have year-long promotional campaigns for those programs, but we also have year-long promotional campaigns for our one large annual conference, the Exit Planning Summit. So we've been using a lot of different forms of content to promote those, whether it be blogs, social posts, webinars with some speakers who are coming to those events, or with our faculty for the credentialing programs. But this year, we've started a podcast based on our advisors' feedback. So the podcasts in the financial advisor industry and business growth and value business owner podcasts, those are very big at the moment. So we wanted to be a part of that. We wanted to get our voice out there in an area where our advisors are already located. They're already engaging in those podcasts. So we wanted to be one that they would engage in as well. So based on the feedback that we received, we've created a podcast called the Exit is Now podcast. So that, again, gets our name out there. It gets our education out there from our president. We interview other CEPAs, other business experts, and it has grown very fast in the past month and a half since we've launched it. And we're going to keep going down that path, continue expanding and sharing that content across multiple platforms. So it's another way to create one form of content and then disseminate it in a bunch of different ways. So we can share that content on our blogs. We can share it on our separate summit website. We can share it on our socials, email campaigns, videos. Another new form that we're using this year is having more video content, because we see that that has a higher engagement rate on our socials. So we're getting into more TikToks and Reels, even though our advisors might not be living in that space. Others might be living in that space who could utilize us. Perhaps a business owner sees those TikToks and then wants to learn more about a CEPA in their area, and they can find us that way. So it might not be our direct audience, but it can be an audience that we can expand into to promote our company, our events, and everything like that. So it's a good way for us to kind of repurpose our existing content, create new content, and then be able to put it in the channels that we know are working. Kind of like Tiffany said, focusing on those 3 that you know are good and introducing one new one. So our new ones this time are actually 2 new ones, so podcasts and TikTok, but we can then use that content in the ones that we know are thriving. So we can incorporate it into our blogs. We can incorporate it into our LinkedIn, which has a huge presence with advisors. And it's kind of a good way to expand our content reach without overextending ourselves.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, there's so many different use cases for even just for like the short form video content. I mean, that's something that you can put on YouTube. You can put on YouTube Shorts, TikTok, a blog, your website. You could turn that into a podcast or your next webinar topic. So there's just so many different use cases. And I think we all know video is here to stay. And I just know too, like, I don't know about you all, but we have seen a downshift in Google search. And it's because people are using TikTok and YouTube as their primary search channel.
Right.
And now we're hearing a ton of buzz around Chat GPT. So I think it's safe to say that our buyers are changing and they're researching our solutions in a different way. So it's, super important to just invest in short form video content, use that across all of your different channels. Like I said before, definitely focus on the top 3 channels that are performing really well for you and where your audience lives. But I love the short form video content. There is just so much you can do with that. The list goes on.
Right.
Yeah.
And especially with the new podcasts, we film them live as well and then share them across our LinkedIn and our social platforms. But after the fact, we have all of those video clips that we can then shorten down and use other places. So it's, like I said, you have one form of content and you can use it in so many different ways after the fact.
Yeah, I was going to jump in. Podcasts were our number one channel last year, especially for building that word of mouth, the brand. Clue launched the Compete Network. So it's actually a whole media brand, and we have 5 different shows that we produce. So we get to leverage folks from our community as influencers, guest speakers. And then it's even more powerful when you hear the messaging in their voice too. We've now gone back to just knowing that people are very visual. So we're going back this year to actually publishing all of those podcasts as video recorded videos and putting them back on YouTube, as YouTube is such a big search engine. We've dabbled in TikTok, but yeah, weren't sure, similar Colleen, weren't sure if that was our exact ICP. Are they hanging out there? But you're right, Tiffany, people are searching and they want more of that validation from their peers rather than clicking on a Google ad or search, for example. So 100%.
And especially if you already have those videos, it doesn't hurt to just put them on TikTok and have that presence just so you are on that platform. But that's kind of what we're doing.
Especially with the captions.
We'll see what sticks.
Yeah, those captions and subtitles are so important as well. And we typically add a little brief summary. So knowing that many folks in our community admit to watching everything at 1.75 speed and they just want the quick and dirty, and then they can move on, or they can reach out to their peers and ask more questions on some of the other channels. LinkedIn has been great for that. It can keep that conversation going in the comments and ask more questions.
I think that's so interesting, especially because, trying to create some sort of presence on channels where you don't think your target immediate audiences, right? Those might not be your buyers, but they might be the people that need to approve spend for people to come to your events, or they might be the people that will advocate internally for people they know to suggest, to recommend, to attend, right? So much of the time, I think we are unfairly obsessed with who the buyer is, right? Who that target audience is, when we realize that person is being influenced by internal and external forces, right? And how can we help motivate that? And with changing stakeholders, changing demographics, we're in this real crazy age where you've got millennials and you have Gen Z and you have all these people really coming to play in the business world, and starting to nurture them early to be interested in your brand will then make them stronger advocates and more passionate about trying to get that buy-in to come, or trying to get that personal development budget to come to your event, right? So I think if you can do it smart, right, by repurposing content, there's no harm in kind of dabbling on some of these other channels outside your purview.
And I'm just going to add one last thing. I think it's very important to note there are 2 reasons why people are on social media. It doesn't matter the platform. They want to be entertained and they want to be educated. So when we think of TikTok, which we're actually, CVEN is not on TikTok, but that's one platform that we want to explore this year. What I'm saying is your Gen Zs and millennials are not the only ones on TikTok. There are CEOs on TikTok. So and like Chris has said, just because your buyers are not on TikTok doesn't mean that your influencers are not on TikTok, because they probably are. So just keep that in mind too, as you're exploring, different channels and tactics this year.
I'm going to move on to the next question today. So one of the things that has been kind of a theme in how we're approaching channels, right, is reutilizing content. And I think there's such a great opportunity for event content in particular, right? Because all of us come from different areas of marketing, but all of us, I'm sure, we all have a hand in structuring event content, whether it's topics or information or helping to put that storyline together, right? We all participate in some way. And it's a lot of time and energy goes into creating what that content is like on site, creating that stuff. So how can we find a way to kind of amplify it, to reuse it, to promote before? I think Colleen, you said you do little webinars beforehand, right? Or follow-ups after, or even kind of projecting your on-site presence, right? Are you streaming it live? What does that look like? But how do we not lose that magic of that point in time when we are reutilizing things so many times? How does it stay relevant? How do we still create, especially with events, that FOMO experience? So we harness it and use it to further engage people who maybe are there, and even people who are not, to maybe draw them to our other events. Or think about your audience out there. Maybe there are people that wanted to come and couldn't come, or people that made the choice not to, or even those influencers, the people that you want them to relive and share the experience they had at your event. As events go, they go by so fast in a blink of an eye and they're over. So how do you use the channels in a strategic way to build that FOMO before, during, and after, but not losing the magic of the moment? And I think I'm going to turn it over to Jen to answer that.
Yeah, for sure. FOMO is definitely real. I have so many thoughts on this topic right now. But yeah, I think the future is really not just looking at the event as the during. I think there's so much opportunity as marketers and community builders to build that up beforehand. So just touching on a couple of examples that we've used at Clue leading into our signature event. We always seek to produce video content when we're launching an event that's entertaining and educational. We want something that's going to cut through the clutter, that's going to make you stop scrolling and say, what is this? You've piqued my interest. We're also looking for user-generated content from our speakers. So one of our speakers literally went out into the bush and filmed his own iPhone video talking about one of his sessions. So makes it much more dynamic, makes you feel like you're getting to know that speaker leading up to that event. Another tactic we tried out this year that wasn't video-based was actually launching it as if it was a big festival. So we purposely held back some speaker names. We had a big speaker poster. We joked that we were hosting the Cluechella or the Coachella of our competitive space. So really got a bit cheeky with our audiences, really tried to push the mark, but it stood out across social and it piqued everyone's interest. When it came time to actually register, launch the event, we of course had those typical channels through email and influencers and speakers posting about it. But I think those little pieces help to build that FOMO leading into it. We also have the community reaching out. So reaching out to their peers saying, hey, I'm going to sign up for this. Are you going to go as well? Makes it less intimidating to show up to an event, especially in person, sometimes even virtual. Joining a chat where you don't know who else is on the other side of the screen, it can be intimidating. So having some friendly faces that you know are also in the audience helps. For us during the event, it's all about, especially when virtual happens, the chat during. So we get moderators, we get people engaged, we take screenshots of great quotes that were said, and then we can relive that content after. Afterwards, we're experimenting with some new formats this year, but we do repurpose into micro videos, closed captions. We always have recap blog posts, YouTube, but we're starting to look at micro follow-up events. So hosting a massive 1,000-person virtual conference, how can we start taking some of those most popular sessions, with those sought after speakers, how can we create some really small exclusive opportunities for our community members to continue to talk about that topic 3 months later, where they might have forgotten what was said, what was happened, but they remembered how that speaker made them feel, and they knew there was something valuable there to go back on. So we're exploring some roundtables, repurposing the exact same presentation. One, we're going to have the speaker repurpose that presentation live, and then another one, we're going to test out a watch party. So knowing folks like to consume content on demand, is there some value in still having that chat live, having that speaker actively answering your questions during the presentation? That's something that we're going to test out with our group of community members as well. And then also you could always host, our team calls this a mailbag episode, but if there are tons of questions in the chat that you just couldn't get to during that 1 hour time slot, could you host a follow-up event or a follow-up podcast where that speaker literally answers those questions one after the other, and continue to nurture some of that, or feed it into future events that can be standalone events on their own too. So that's what I really see is nurturing the community, bringing people back, disseminating it across video, making it as accessible as possible, but still building that real human connection. Because yeah, FOMO is real.
I love that's like Inception, like events within events and then events
Yeah.
from events. So like your channel is like using events to promote events, which I kind of love.
Yeah, that's true, especially within a community. So it's kind of that closed door, you know who else is at the table. And then those connections start to build on LinkedIn, or it can spill over outside of our community. And that's something that we get really excited about, while difficult to track, but it comes back in qualitative ways and references, and it builds our brand within the community when folks are looking for a competitive intelligence tool.
Yeah. And there's, I think harnessing the community as a community anywhere as a channel to promote your events is such an interesting concept. I'm in several different like Slack communities, right? Not just my corporate community, but communities for demand generation or marketing and information like that. And there's a whole channel there about events. What's going on near you? What's coming up in the industry? And people post their events in there all the time. And you can then see people engage and interact. And I can catch, oh, hey, I know Colleen is going to be in Phoenix next week at this event. And one, I respect Colleen, so it must be credible, right? I want to be there. I can see who the other people are, and I know I want to connect and talk to Colleen. So it then brings this community-driven aspect to the events that I am enticed to go because I know the connections that I will make on site. Because still to this day, whenever we do research or polls, the number one reason people go to, especially face-to-face events, is that networking opportunity. And if you can give them a taste or find ways to get them talking beforehand, I think that is a just awesome opportunity to find a channel that will let you do that and let the attendees kind of spread the word and network for you to promote your.
Yeah. And that way it lives beyond just that one moment in time. And with on-demand content, they know they can always get the content, but you're not always going to have those point in time conversations. So that's where virtual world, the chat, is so important.
It's interesting hearing you talk about what kind of designs you've used to promote your events. Like the Cluecella is something that we've actually started using for our summit this year to announce our speakers in kind of a Coachella format. And that's something that we're very excited to release, because in the past we've done mostly like, this is the person who's speaking, this is the date of the event. And we did get some traction there, but you're right, people are looking for more engaging things to kind of stop them from scrolling. So we have one of our keynote speakers this year is Mark Randolph, who is the co-founder and the first CEO of Netflix. So we played off of Netflix, like who's speaking instead of who's watching, for some posts that we had designed. We have like a streaming platform kind of imagery to show what his session's about, and then some other sessions that we think you might be interested in underneath. So it's interesting, like ways to show what our event is, but also who's speaking. And we share other speakers across social platforms as well, so that they want to share that they'll be at this event. Come network with them, come meet them, come experience what they can provide to other advisors or to business owners, and sharing that they are a main part of the event, not just that we are hosting this event. It's an event for everyone and not just something that we put on.
Even your speakers can be an amazing community to themselves as
Right.
well. We found the speakers want to engage with the other speakers. And then going into their sessions, they also want to know what questions folks have so that they can make sure to address it and give their best presentation as well.
I think
Definitely.
and we've got someone asking about the Coachella format, right? And the concept of, especially in the B2B space, your audience, it's been a trend for a couple of years now. Your audience wants to feel and be treated more like B2C marketing a lot of times, right? So how are we bringing that here? And this Coachella format is this, Jen, you've like coined this now, like, but
I wasn't the one that came up with it. There's cooler
like,
people on my team.
promoting it like you would promote a music concert that
Yeah.
go to, right?
So we would purposely blur some of the speaker lines, but you could see some logos. You could kind of, if you really knew those logos, you could start figuring it out through the blurred lines. But yeah, we'd have different release dates, and it was set up like a music festival. So day one, you've got this headliner with guest acts. So yeah, it was a fun way. And then we continue to repurpose that in some of the branding as well during the conference. But
I love that. I feel like
similar to what we're doing. So.
Yeah. I mean, when you really think about it, I think we take ourselves way too seriously marketing in the B2B world, when really at the end of the day, whether you're in B2B, B2C, you're still marketing to humans. So again, we all want to be educated. We all want to be entertained. And Jen, I love how you talked about the guy like filming near a bush. Like, it just seems very scrappy and not very branded. And I feel like that, it's very authentic. It's fresh. It's something that would make me stop from scrolling in my newsfeed, because again, sometimes, it's kind of overkill on the stock images. Like, stay away from that. Use real people, have someone, record themselves using their iPhone. That's what we've been testing on YouTube Shorts. And it's like, it's performing so much better than when we have kind of the more branded, I don't want to say boring, but at the same time, it is sometimes boring because it's the same thing that everybody else is doing. So when you really like take the human part and put that into your marketing, I feel like that is what is going to that's what's going to connect someone to your brand. So.
Especially with, like you said, B2B industries, some of those events that happen from other companies, they're all promoting them the same way. So they're all promoting, this is the event that can do X, Y, and Z for you. And at that point, you're like, okay, was it this company's or was it that company's? They all look the same. So if your promotions look different and are intriguing and more engaging, they're going to remember your event over the other ones, and they're going to want to come to your event over the other ones too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Colleen, I know that's a big part of your content strategy too. One thing that always catches my eye on content that I know that you have had a hand in, right, is I'm scrolling LinkedIn and I've got this very entertaining article about Halloween and spooky stories and how it relates to exit planning, or getting divorced on Valentine's Day. And I just think it's such a refreshing way to kind of break through that clutter and that noise. How do you go about getting that kind of internal buy-in to take a risk like that?
So when I first started, I wrote like one creative article, and then my managers and like direct teammates were like, okay, that was the one that we could tell you really enjoyed writing and it really resonated with our audience. Please keep doing things like that. So if I come up with a creative idea, they're like, well, it might work, it might not, but we know it's going to be something you enjoy writing. So we know it's going to be something people will enjoy reading. So those are kind of the tactics that I take for it. And like you said, the Valentine's Day divorce article, I've been doing that now for 3 years, and I plan on doing it every Valentine's Day as long as I work here, talking about divorce on Valentine's Day. Because in our industry, business owners who work with their spouses, there's a higher rate of divorce, and how does that impact your business? So it is a topic that people want to read about. But on Valentine's Day, other companies are talking about how to successfully work with your spouse. And we're like, well, what if you didn't? Let's go that route instead. So something that kind of, again, goes through the noise, goes through the clutter, and that they want to read. And again, with those eye-catching images and graphics, it'll stop them from moving on to the next piece.
I think as we kind of reach time here, because I want to give us some time to answer some questions and kind of see what's up. The interesting part about how we've all approached and are thinking about different channels, right, is to make them feel genuine, right? Normal. They want to feel, we want to approach people how they would like to be talked to face, right? We want to do that through our email. We want to do that for our blogs. We want to do that on social. We want to do that in video where we're showing how people kind of actually are and not this polished version of themselves or this inauthentic, scripted, promotion, right? And I think when we talk about promoting events, that's why events are always such a successful marketing channel, right? Year after year, we're looking at budgets and we're like, man, events just work. And they get this big proportion of budget and spend because we know that we can get that human connection and have those conversations with people in a way that some of our other channels cannot. So it's like bringing the things that work about events to your other marketing channels to then continue that promotion of what people can expect on site. So it's this real cyclical approach, which I think is the inception now of event promotion. So it's not just about what channels, but fueling them with the right type of content and then making sure that your audience is engaging and interacting with it. So we've got Colleen, who's really using her channels to tell stories, Tiffany, who wants to use those to drive action, and then Jen, who is building and using channels to drive that loyalty and network. I think what we'll do now is this will be the end of kind of our communication, right? But what we're going to do is stick around and answer some questions in the chat. We want you guys to be a part of this conversation. So let me know what you guys want to hear. Do you have any questions for us about how we're approaching channels? I know even in the beginning in the poll, we've got only 7% of our audience is in podcasts. So all of us have launched a podcast this year. If you want some questions on that, tell me about how it's going for each one of you. I'll get us started on that. How's your podcast going? What made you pull the trigger on launching your podcast this year? Colleen.
Like I said, it was something that our audience told us that they wanted more of. So people really enjoy listening to our president talk. He has a very engaging and storytelling communication style. So people really wanted to hear his story, how he became an entrepreneur and a business owner, and how what we teach owners works in our own business and how we can, again, improve the lives of business owners and advisors. So that was something that we just listened to what our audience wanted and then created it for them. So we have our podcast studio in office. We record every other week. We release them every other week. And it's something that we are filling the need of our audience and allowing other advisors in our industry, other influencers in the industry to be guests on that podcast, to share it across their networks. It's just something, again, we saw the need and we wanted to create that need, fill the need.
I love that. Another question, and I'm going to ask Tiffany. Tiffany, so email is still the #1 channel for promotional tactics for events in particular. We saw it in the poll. We see it all the time. What about email? How does email still work then in this universe of new channels, right, and new ways of consumption? Or why is it still going to be such a strong pillar for us?
Email is not dead. We in the B2B world, we absolutely still use email. I guess I would just encourage everyone to be more creative with your emails. So when you think of how we were talking about like the short form video content, you can embed a GIF in your emails and have that clickable, have that go to the short form video or long form video content. But I do think making them more kind of personal in a way and not so much branded, that's going to be key in 2023. Have your subject lines stand out, do a lot of A/B testing. We have a wonderful team here at Cvent who actually manages our email. And they've been testing like emojis in the subject line. So things like that, like just be open to take risks and try new things rather than kind of that long form, boring email content. So, just like I said, take a lot of that long form video content, turn that around into short video clips, add some GIFs to your email, break up the copy in your email so it's not just like a bundled 2 long paragraphs, kind of break it up a little bit. Try new subject lines, test, sentence case versus plural case, and test emojis, just different things that you can definitely bring to the table for emails. But emails are not dead, so keep doing the emails.
I agree with that. Some other pieces that we do is we always have it personalized. So I literally write all of the event emails, or my colleague Adam, who's the host of our podcast. And so it's not this templated, beautiful branded thing that's all consistent. Like, I have my style, Adam has his style. We put our little face icon, we add emojis to the subject line, and then we try to keep the really pointed emails just to a one-off CTA. And sometimes it's just hyperlinking the text. You don't need like a super fancy, we do a button, but interestingly, the hyperlink text gets just as many clicks and converts. One other thing I was going to say about email that we've also tested out and we'll be doubling down on is LinkedIn has a newsletter feature. So a little harder to track the metrics. They don't have a great dashboard right now, but we do a weekly Sunday newsletter. So it's 5 minutes of coffee and compete in your inbox. And so my colleague Ben writes that. And it's always a nice long form, meant to be a good 5-minute read. But we've been testing it out on LinkedIn, and we've seen a ton of traction. I think we gained a number of subscribers in just a few hours. Now they get a notification. Most of our audience lives on LinkedIn. They told me they keep a tab open with their LinkedIn open at all times. So seems like a great channel to explore and check out if you're also looking to connect and your audience is on LinkedIn.
I love that. I think LinkedIn is huge for anybody in the B2B space. Okay, we've got another question from Drew. Is there a channel that you found particularly successful for getting a new audience, right? And not just keeping your current audience engaged?
I can kind of speak to that. YouTube is huge. So again, Google owns YouTube. So when you think about the way your buyers are searching, or maybe they're even searching for like an upcoming event, that is going to be tied to Google search. So your YouTube video will appear more at the top of the search engine. So YouTube has been going very strong for us. We really kind of honed in on it late 2021. And we have the important thing to know is we had all of these videos and we just were not sure what to do with them. So when we updated our YouTube channel, we got a lot more subscribers, a lot more engagement, a lot more views, impressions, those sort of things. And now with YouTube Shorts kind of taking off, which has a little bit of the same algorithm as Instagram Reels and TikTok, that is another key pillar that has been really successful for us here at Cvent. So I can't speak to if we're gaining a new audience, but I will say it's working. We're getting a lot of views. We're getting a lot of impressions. The engagement metrics are there. So I would take advantage, if you already have videos, I would absolutely take advantage of YouTube and test it out, maybe as your new kind of platform that you're exploring this year.
Oh, I like that. If we have any more questions, otherwise what I think we'll do, I like ending on that. Let's each pick a channel. I'm going to ask each one of you. Tiffany's going to say, and you can say if you want to stick with YouTube, right? What is your channel that you are particularly excited about expanding into or experimenting with this year? So Tiffany, you're going to go with YouTube?
I'm going to go with YouTube.
I love it. I think that's a good one. Jen, what about you?
Oh, this is tricky. Yeah, there's a lot of touch points with the community. So I would say LinkedIn, just harnessing LinkedIn. There's so much more we could tap into with that. I know my community lives on there, so we aren't introducing another Slack community. I feel like our audience has said they have a lot of those. Their tabs or notifications are maxed out, but LinkedIn is one channel that they're always on top of. So
yeah, and that's kind of similar for us. We are most engaged with our audience on LinkedIn, so we can continue to grow that over this year. But like I said in the beginning, kind of increasing our podcast and video format to then share across TikTok and some Instagram reels to kind of build out our short form video.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for coming. Stick around if you guys have any questions or chat. You can toss them in there. We'll be around to answer some of those. Otherwise, take a minute to fill out the survey, which you can see on the right-hand side again, kind of down at the bottom, to let us know kind of what you thought about our webinar today. We also have some really great webinars coming up next week. We have one all about the event technologist, which is a new role we're seeing kind of emerging in the event space. March 7th, you can come join me again. We are having a webinar about getting buy-in budget and executing event activations, which are some of my favorite things, right? And then we have another one that's really great for marketers that same week called Building a Connected Event Marketing Strategy. So hopefully we will see you all soon and see you again. I think we dropped the registration links for those in the chat if you are interested. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for coming and joining us today. And thank you, Colleen and Tiffany and Jen, for being a part of this and willing to answer some of the tough questions.